Hi, I'm Sutton. I covered the down payment on the lake house, the catering, my mother's 70th birthday yacht charter, every single thing on that itinerary down to the welcome cocktails. And on the second night, sitting at a long table set for 12, my mother lifted her champagne flute, looked past me like I was a centerpiece she'd ordered too many of, and said, "This weekend isn't yours to claim, Sutton. Don't make a scene of yourself again." Nobody flinched. My older brother smirked into his bourbon. My sister-in-law actually laughed, the polite little hiccup she does when she wants someone to know she heard the joke. The waitstaff were Jennings hires, all of them on a bill addressed to my email. And I sat there, smiling the way I always smile, because I'd been smiling that way since I was 7. So I did the thing they would never expect from the responsible one. The fixer. The wallet. I stopped fixing. Ever wonder how long it takes a 31-year-old woman to undo 24 years of being convenient? 3 days, as it turns out, and one click. I drove up to Lake Muskoka on a Wednesday afternoon. The trunk of my Volvo packed with the kind of things you bring when you're hosting and you know nobody will say thank you. 2 cases of the Sancerre my mother claims is the only one she drinks. A box of monogrammed napkins I'd had embroidered 6 weeks earlier with the family crest my father designed back in the 80s. A Le Creuset Dutch oven because my sister-in-law had texted me casually that it would be nice to have one at the lake. I'd ordered it that same night, $340. I wrote it off as the cost of being included. The lake house wasn't a lake house exactly. It was a 6-bedroom Adirondack-style compound my parents had bought in 2009 with my father's bonus and a generous loan I co-signed at 24, because my credit was better than my brother's. 12 years later, my name was still on the deed. So was the maintenance contract. So was the property insurance. So was the dock permit. Every spring, I wrote a check for $14,200 to keep the place winterized, mowed, and pest-free. My brother and his wife used it twice a year. My parents lived there from May to October. I've been invited exactly 4 times in 12 years. This was the 5th. When I pulled into the gravel circle, my brother's truck was already there, hitched to the Bayliner I'd helped finance after his investment opportunity went sideways in 2019. My niece, who is 9, ran out barefoot on the warm stones and threw her arms around my hips. "Auntie Sutton, you brought the cookies?" I had brought the cookies. I'd baked 4 dozen the night before, salted brown butter chocolate chip, her favorite, and labeled the tin with her name in silver Sharpie. She squeezed me, then ran back inside without waiting to help me carry anything. I stood for a second, listening to the lake slap against the dock, watching a heron pick its way through the reeds, and I told myself this was going to be different. I told myself a lot of things. My mother opened the screen door with a dish towel over her shoulder, looked at the wine and said, "Oh, you found it. Was the drive bad?" Not hello, not thank you, not we're so glad you're here. Just the small administrative voice she used with the cleaning lady. My sister-in-law was at the kitchen island arranging cheese on a board I had bought 3 Christmases ago. My brother was on the deck with our father, both of them holding tumblers, both of them already laughing about something that would never be repeated for me. I carried my own bag down the hall to the room I always got, the one above the laundry, and I sat on the bed for a minute listening to the dryer thump through the floor, and I let myself feel it, just briefly before I put it away again. Dinner that night was lobster rolls and corn that I had ordered through a service and paid for with my Amex. My sister-in-law, whose name is Adrienne, and who has never once liked me, made a toast about togetherness that did not mention me even though I had paid for the togetherness. My niece kicked me under the table, sweetly, as if to remind me she remembered. My mother told a story about my brother's childhood that I had also been present for, except in her version I wasn't. My father refilled his wine and didn't notice. When the plates were cleared, my mother turned to me, napkin folded in her lap the way she does when she's about to be syrupy, and said, "Sutton, sweetheart, this weekend isn't yours to claim. Don't make a scene of yourself again." I didn't ask what scene. I knew what scene. There was no scene. There was no scene. The scene was that I had once, in 2019, asked at Christmas dinner if anyone would like to acknowledge that I had paid for the Christmas dinner. That was the scene. It had become a family Bible verse. The room laughed politely. My brother, whose name is Holden and who is 36 and has never held a job longer than 2 years, said, "Sutton, you can't help it, can you? It's like a tick." Adrian giggled. My niece looked at her plate. My father did not look up from his bread. I smiled. I bit into a piece of corn that tasted like cardboard, and I nodded, because that's what I'd always done. That night I lay in the laundry room bedroom and counted the rotations of the ceiling fan, and somewhere around 300 I realized I had been holding my jaw clenched for so long that my teeth ached. I unclenched. I breathed. And then, for the first time in a long time, I got up and opened my laptop. In the morning, the house buzzed with the kind of fake brightness that comes from people who slept well because nothing was bothering them. My mother had laid out matching linen overshirts, dusty rose with Whitlock 70 stitched on the chest in cream. There were 6 of them on the kitchen island. I counted. There were 6. My niece, my nephew, my brother, Adrian, my father, Adrian, my father, my mother. I picked up the stack and turned each one over, looking, and there was no 7th. My mother, watching me from the coffee maker, said brightly, "Oh, sweetie, I didn't think you'd want one. You don't really do the matching thing." I do the matching thing. I do all the matching thing. I do all the matching things. I had paid the embroidery deposit on those shirts in March. The invoice was in my inbox. I put the stack down. I poured myself coffee. I said, "You're right, I don't." And I went out onto the deck. The boat captain we had hired for the week, a kid named Theo who couldn't have been more than 22, was tying off at the dock with the morning's coolers. He waved at me as I came down the steps. "Mrs. Whitlock," he called, "are you joining us today? I've got 6 on the manifest, but I can squeeze in 1 more." I almost laughed. I said, "I'm not Mrs. Whitlock, I'm her daughter, and no, apparently I'm not on the manifest." He looked confused, scratched the back of his neck, said, "Oh, sorry, your mom said it would just be the family today. I figured you must be the in-law. I figured you must be the in-law." I walked back up to the house. My sandals dug into the back of my heels. I did not cry. I went into my room, opened my laptop, and pulled up the credit card statements for the past 18 months. I made a folder on my desktop. I named it Receipts. I started saving things into it. That afternoon, while they were out on the boat, I sat on the screened porch with a cold brew and I went to every shared account my family had access to. The Costco membership in my name they used for bulk groceries every month. The Amazon household I'd set up so my niece could order school supplies, which Adrian had been using for her Peloton accessories and pottery kiln supplies. The streaming bundle I paid for so my parents could watch their British mysteries. The cell phone family plan my father had asked me to take over in 2020 because, and I quote, "It's just easier with your credit, kiddo." 6 lines. Mine, my parents, my brothers, Adrian's, my nieces, my nephews. $240 a month, every month, for 4.5 years. I pulled up the lake house spreadsheet next, the one my mother kept on Google Sheets and called Transparency. There was a tab labeled Contributions. My name appeared in the contributions column under nearly every line. Their names appeared in a column called In Kind, with notes like hosted Easter and drove the boat. I had been hosting myself. I had been driving my own boat. I closed the laptop and watched the heron come back to the reeds, and I thought, very quietly, "Oh." That was when my niece came up the porch steps in her wet swimsuit, dripping, holding a juice box. She climbed into the chair next to mine and said, "Auntie Sutton, do you have a real job?" I said yes, I did. I am an actuary, a fact none of my family has ever found interesting enough to remember the title of. She said, "Mom said you don't really work, you just have money because you didn't get married, so you have nothing else to spend it on." She said it with a child's exact, devastating neutrality, the way she'd repeat the capitals of states. I looked at her. I looked at her wet hair stuck to her cheek. I looked at the juice box. And I said, "Sweetheart, I work very hard. I work harder than your mom and your dad and grandma combined. Don't ever let anyone tell you that money just shows up for women who don't have husbands. It shows up because they earn it." She blinked. She said, "Okay." She drank her juice. She slid off the chair and ran back to the dock. I sat there, and I felt something very quiet shift in my chest. It wasn't anger. Anger would have been louder. It was the sound of a door closing. Not slamming, just closing, with a click. That night, after dinner, I went into the small office off the great room where my father kept his fishing tackle and his old letters, and I opened the bottom drawer of the desk because I had remembered something. There was a small recorder in there, a digital one he had used in the 90s to dictate work memos. It still had batteries. I tested it. It worked. I slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan. I did not record anything yet. I was building towards something. I didn't know it yet, but the recorder was the first concrete thing. The second concrete thing was the voicemail. My grandmother, my father's mother, had died 4 years ago. Her name was Rosalind, and she had been the only person in my entire family who ever said my full name like it was something she wanted to taste. She left me a voicemail on a Tuesday in March of the year she died, and I had never deleted it, and I had never deleted it, and I had not played it once since the funeral. It sat in the saved folder on my phone, 4 years and 2 months old, untouched. I played it that night, in the laundry room bedroom with the lights off. Her voice was thin and reedy from the chemo, but the words were hers. Sutton, my girl, I want you to know something. They're going to take and take from you, your mother especially, because that's what she's always done. You are not the family wallet. You are the family heart, and they don't know the difference. Don't let them spend you, sweetheart. Promise me, don't let them spend you. She had paused. She had laughed, that papery laugh she had at the end. Now hang up, kid. The price white is on. I had forgotten that. I had forgotten she said that. I lay in the dark and let her voice live in the room for a long time, and I did not cry. I just felt my spine straighten itself, vertebra by vertebra, the way a plant turns toward light without being told. The next morning, I made breakfast for everyone. Pancakes, bacon, the works on the cast iron skillet I had also brought. My mother said, "You're being so helpful, Sutton. What's gotten into you?" in the tone she uses when she suspects she is being managed. I smiled at her. I said, "I just wanted to do something nice for the family." I put the recorder in my cardigan pocket. I pressed record before I came down the stairs. For the next 2 hours, I cooked, served, cleared, wiped, and listened. I listened to my mother tell Adrian, in the pantry, that she had hoped I would have settled down by now, because the money thing is getting embarrassing. I listened to my brother tell my father in the den that the lake house mortgage refinance had gone through and Sutton's signature held it up for a week. Can you believe that? After everything? I listened to Adrian tell my niece, on the porch, that Auntie Sutton means well. But she's a sad person, sweetheart, and we have to be patient with her. I listened to my mother say with a little laugh, "She thinks paying for things makes her one of us. She thinks paying for things makes her one of us." I let the recorder run until the file was over an hour long. Then I went upstairs, saved it to my cloud, and named it Saturday Morning Audio. Then I made a copy. Then I made another copy. Then I emailed one to my own work address, one to my personal Gmail, and one to my attorney, a woman named Ines who had handled my will and who I now realized I was going to be calling on Monday. I want to be clear about something. I was not a saint. I was not levitating above this, hovering in some calm Buddha state. I was furious. I was so furious my hands were shaking when I poured my mother's second cup of coffee. But I had learned something at 31 that I had not known at 21. Furious women lose. Calm women win. So I poured the coffee and I said, "Sugar, Mom?" And I smiled because the receipts folder on my desktop was now 73 documents long. The dinner that night was the formal one, the 70th birthday dinner. My mother's friends had driven up from Toronto. There were 14 people at the table, an event coordinator I had hired, a private chef I had hired, a string trio I had hired, and a custom cake from a bakery in Yorkville that had cost $1,200, and that I had picked up myself 2 days earlier. My mother wore the diamond earrings my father had given her for their 40th anniversary, which she had told everyone he picked out. I had picked them out. He had asked me to. I had also paid for them, and he had paid me back over 30 months at 0 interest because he hadn't wanted my mother to know he didn't have the cash. She made a toast. She thanked my brother for being the rock of the family. She thanked Adrian for being the daughter she'd always wanted. She thanked her grandchildren for being her greatest joy. She thanked my father for 50 years of partnership. And then she sat down. And the room applauded. And I sat there in a navy dress I had bought for the occasion, and I waited, because I thought maybe she would remember. Even at the last second, she didn't. The toast went around the table. Adrian stood. My brother stood. My father stood, briefly, and said something about how proud he was. The string trio played. The chef brought out the first course. And in the middle of the soup, I stood up, very quietly, and I lifted my own glass. "I just want to say a few words about my mother," I said. The table turned to me. My mother's smile thinned. "Mom, you are 70 years old today. That's a remarkable thing. And I wanted to acknowledge a few of the people who made tonight possible." I looked around the table. I named the chef. I named the coordinator. I named the bakery. I named the trio. I named the captain of the boat that had taken everyone out that morning. And then I said, very simply, I paid for all of them. I paid for this house, this dock, this dinner, those earrings, and the dress my sister-in-law's wearing tonight, which I bought her for Christmas. I have been paying for this family for 12 years. I am 31 years old. And tonight, I am going to stop. Nobody spoke. My mother's face went the color of a wet napkin. My brother set down his fork. Adrian's mouth opened, then closed. My father looked, for the first time all weekend, directly at me. His eyes were wet. I could not tell if it was shame or if it was the wine. "I'm not going to make a scene," I said. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for thanks. I just wanted you to know before you ate the cake I paid for that I knew. That I always knew. And that I'm done." I sat back down. I picked up my soup spoon. I ate the rest of my soup. The string trio, God bless them, kept playing. My mother stood up after a long minute and said in her syrupy voice, "Sutton, dear, perhaps we can discuss this privately later. Tonight is not the night." And I looked at her and I said, "You're right. Tonight is not the night. Tonight is the last night." I didn't say anything else for the rest of the dinner. I ate. I had a slice of the cake. It was excellent. The bakery had earned every penny. And then I went up to my room and I sat at the small desk by the window and I opened my laptop in my room and I went to work. The first thing I did was log into the family cell plan and remove every line except mine. The carrier sent automated emails to each device confirming the change. The second thing I did was log into Amazon and dissolve the household. The third thing I did was log into Costco and cancel the secondary cards. The fourth thing I did was call the streaming services one by one on my cell phone and cancel the family memberships, including the audiobook subscription my mother had been using to listen to her British mysteries. The fifth thing I did was open the doc permit account and submit a transfer of ownership request to my parents' name, which would, I knew, require them to pay the back taxes and the survey fee that had been due in April, which I had been quietly absorbing. The sixth thing was the big one. I logged into the Lake House property management portal, and I removed my credit card from the autopay. I did not cancel the services. I just removed myself as the payer. The next bill, due in 11 days, was for $4,300. The seventh thing was the insurance. I called the broker's after-hours line, left a voicemail asking to be removed as the named insured, and to have the policy transferred to my parents. The premium was $9,200 a year. I had been paying it since 2013. The eighth thing was the loan. I emailed the loan officer at the credit union and started the process to refinance my co-signed portion off the mortgage. This would take 90 days and would require my brother to qualify on his own, which I knew he would not. That was not my problem anymore. The ninth thing was the Amex. I logged into my account, found the authorized user list, and removed every name except my own. 5 names came off. My mother, my father, my brother. Adrian, the household manager at the lake house, a woman named Polly, whom I genuinely liked and to whom I sent a separate text apologizing in advance. The 10th thing was the audio file. I uploaded it to a private link, and I drafted an email to my mother, my father, my brother, and Adrian. The subject line was, "For your records." The body said, "I'm including the audio from this morning so there is no confusion later about what was said and by whom." I will not be discussing this. I will not be responding to calls. If anyone needs to speak with me, please reach out to my attorney, Inez Castellanos, whose contact information is below. I love you. I am not coming back. Sutton. I scheduled the email to send at 7 a.m. the following morning. Then I packed. I did not pack in a fury. I folded each shirt the way I always fold them, sleeves in, then half again. I rolled my socks. I zipped my toiletries into the cube I always use. I left the linen overshirt I had not been given on the bed, smoothed flat, even though it had not been mine in the first place. I left my mother's favorite sensere on the kitchen counter with a note that said, "Enjoy. S." I left the Le Creuset on the stove. I left the napkins in the drawer. I left, on my niece's pillow, the tin of cookies I had baked, with a folded piece of paper on top that said, "You are smart and kind, and the money does not come from nowhere. It comes from women who decide to be free. Auntie Sutton." I drove away at 5:47 a.m. The lake was glass. The heron was on the dock again, and as I pulled out of the gravel circle, it lifted off, slowly, the way they do, all wing and patience. I was on Highway 11 when the phone calls started. My mother first, at 7004, then my brother, at 7001, then Adrian, at 7023, twice, then my father, at 802, who did not leave a voicemail but who called 4 times in a row. I did not answer. I drove to a diner outside Gravenhurst and I ordered eggs and bacon and a black coffee, and I sat in a vinyl booth and I watched the calls stack up. By the time my eggs arrived, I had 31 missed calls and 47 text messages. I read them. I will admit that. I read every one. My mother denying the audio existed. My mother saying it was selectively edited. My mother saying it was selectively edited. My mother saying I had always been like this. My brother saying I was a vindictive person and our father was going to have a heart attack because of me. Adrian saying I had ruined my niece's birthday weekend, even though it was not my niece's birthday and we had not been celebrating her. My father, finally, at 8:47, with a single text that said, "Sutton, please call me. I didn't know about the earrings situation either. We need to talk." I read that one twice. I put the phone face down on the table. I ate my eggs. I tipped 25%. I got back in the Volvo. I want to tell you what happened next, because I think this is the part the comments always ask about. I did not melt. I did not call back. I drove home to Toronto. I unpacked. I did laundry. I went into my office on Monday and I told my manager I needed to take 3 weeks of vacation immediately. And she looked at my face and said, "Take a month." I called Inez on Monday afternoon. I sent her the audio. I sent her the receipts folder, which by then had grown to 92 documents. I told her what I wanted. I wanted a clean, quiet, complete separation. I wanted my name off the deed by the end of the year. I wanted my name off the insurance, off the loan, off everything. I did not want money back. I did not want apologies. I did not want to fight. I just wanted out. She said, "Sutton, you understand that you may have grounds to recover some of what you've spent." I said, "I understand. I don't want it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good for you, kid." Most of my clients can't say that. I flew to Lisbon the following week. I did not tell anyone where I was going. I rented a small apartment in Alfama with a tiled balcony that looked out over the river, and I drank coffee in the mornings and walked everywhere in the afternoons, and I did not check my phone for 3 days at a stretch. On the 4th day, I made a list of the people I wanted to be in my life going forward. It was a short list. 3 of my friends from college, my manager, 2 cousins on my father's side I had always liked, Polly, the household manager, who had texted me a single line that read, "I figured it was you all along. Take care of yourself." And my niece. That last one was complicated. My niece is 9. She did not do this. She is being raised by people who did. I wrote her a letter, by hand, in the apartment in Alfama, and I told her that I loved her, and that when she was 18, she could write to me at the address I included, and that I would always answer, and that until then, she should be careful with her heart and her money, and remember what I told her about women who earn what they have. I mailed it through Inez, who arranged for it to be held in trust. I did not know if my niece would ever read it. I had to make peace with not knowing. When I came home from Lisbon, my apartment was the same and I was not. I cooked dinner for myself. I lit a candle. I poured a glass of the same Sancerre I had left on my mother's counter, because I genuinely do like it and I was not going to let her have that too. I sat at my kitchen table, alone, and I ate and I thought about my grandmother and the heron and my niece's wet hair and the look on my father's face when I stood up at the dinner. I thought about how the room had been silent and how nobody had jumped in to defend her, not even him. That was the part nobody warned me about. The part where you find out that the people you spent 12 years protecting could not, in the end, defend the person who needed defending. They just sat there, forks down, eyes on the soup, and the silence, when it finally came, did the work I had been doing for them my entire life. If you've ever been the responsible one, the steady one, the one who picks up the bill and the slack and the pieces, I want you to hear me. You are not their wallet. You are not their backup plan. You are not the cost of doing business. You are a whole person, and the people who love you should be able to say your name out loud at their own birthday parties. If they can't, that is information. That is not a tragedy. That is a map. I am not telling you to do what I did. I am telling you that you can. The card can be frozen. The plan can be canceled. The deed can be transferred. The door can close gently with a click, and on the other side of it there is a balcony in a city you have never been to, and a glass of wine that is yours alone, and a heron, somewhere, lifting off into a sky that does not belong to anyone but itself. If this story sounded familiar, if you felt your jaw clench at the part about the linen shirts or the manifest or the soup, I want to hear from you. Type the word Hajard in the comments or tell me the city you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, tell me that too. This space is for every voice, including the ones still figuring out which one is theirs. And if you want more stories like this one, the kind that don't shout, the kind where the women walk out quietly and don't look back, subscribe and stay close. There's another one coming. There's always another one. We've got a lot of receipts. I've been thinking a lot, in the months since that weekend at Lake Muskoka, about the moment my niece looked up at me on the porch and asked if I had a real job. She wasn't being cruel. She was 9. She was repeating what she'd been taught at the dinner table by people who genuinely believed it, or who at least benefited from believing it, and that, more than anything my mother said, more than the manifest with 6 names on it, more than the linen shirt that wasn't there, is what I keep coming back to. Because cruelty has consequences, but conditioning has generations. I want to say something honest about why I let it go on for so long. The comments under stories like mine always ask the same question. Why didn't she stop sooner? Why did she keep paying? And the answer, if I'm being truthful, is that I confused being needed with being loved. I thought if I just kept showing up, kept smoothing things, kept signing the papers and writing the checks, eventually they would notice. Eventually they would say my name out loud at a birthday party. That was my mistake, not the kindness. The kindness was real. The mistake was thinking kindness was a transaction that would eventually pay out. It doesn't work that way. Kindness given to people who treat it as currency just teaches them the exchange rate. What I learned, sitting on that balcony in Lisbon at 31 years old, is that integrity is not about being good to people who are good to you. That part is easy. Integrity is about knowing in your bones what you owe and what you don't owe, and being willing to feel the discomfort of telling the truth about it out loud in a navy dress in front of your mother on her 70th birthday. That takes nerve, not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind my grandmother Rosalind had when she made me promise on a voicemail I almost deleted not to let them spend me. I don't believe that what we suffer is owed to us by the universe. I don't believe my family's behavior was anyone's fault but theirs. But I do believe in cause and effect, in the simple arithmetic of choices. They chose year after year to take without naming. I chose year after year to give without requiring. The math eventually balances. It balanced in soup at a dinner I paid for. It balanced in a folder called receipts. It balanced in a click. If you're watching this and you've been the responsible one, the steady one, the one whose name keeps appearing in the contributions column of someone else's spreadsheet, I want you to hear me. Strength is not the same as endurance. Endurance just means you can take more. Strength means you know when to stop. And wisdom, the real kind, the kind nobody teaches you in school, is just the long, slow work of telling yourself the truth before anyone else has to. I'm not free because I left. I'm free because I finally believed I was allowed to.